But we'll jump right into the Eagles Cowboys, and the Cowboys exposed the Eagles yesterday. 33-13 victory. Dak Prescott seized control of the MVP race, whether we agree with that or not. He was 24 for 38 for 271 and 2 touchdowns. Didn't have a pick. He did have a key fumble, which kept the Eagles alive in the game. But Dallas's offense looks maybe like the best in the league. It's probably them or San Francisco for the best offensive team in the league. Dak looks like maybe the best quarterback in the league right now. The defense played pretty well last night. The Eagles did not score an offensive touchdown in the game. Dallas's upcoming schedule: at Buffalo, at Miami, versus Detroit, versus Washington. Can they win out?
No, I don't think so. I think we talked a little bit about this last night, but I think my big one, which I told you, is I just don't see them going into Buffalo in December and winning that game. I just can't see it. I know they've looked so good, but I know deep down they're still the Cowboys, and they just it seems like just when you think they've turned the corner and they're maybe the most dominant team in football, they throw in a stinker, which they did early in the year to the Cardinals, and I think we could both agree they just weren't ready to play for that game.
Yeah.
Ready to play, whatever it may be. Plus, that's not a tough place to play. There's probably more Cowboys fans than Cardinals fans there, and indoors. So, Buffalo, though, in December is a different kind of beast. Buffalo's playing for their season as well. It's not a first-round bye or anything for them. It's, can we get in the playoffs?
Right.
McDermott's coaching for his job. I mean, there's just a lot on the line for Buffalo. And I know you can say that there's obviously a lot on the line for Dallas, too, but things are going to have to go their way to get that first-round bye, and I just think it's a much more important game for the Bills that I see them winning. So, but we talked about the other games. I do think they can win those other 3 games. I know at Miami's been playing the other toughest one. They'll beat Detroit at home. They own the Commanders. They'll beat them. So, is it back-to-back weeks, Buffalo, then Miami?
Yeah, it's at Buffalo, at Miami.
To win both of them would be, I think they would be, if they get out of these 2 games 1-1, I know that isn't necessarily what they need or after the bye, but if they get out of it 1-1, I would say that's a job well done. I do think they will lose in Buffalo. I do think they'll win in Miami.
Yeah, and that loss that you mentioned to the Arizona Cardinals earlier in the year looms large, because you take that loss away, which is really the only bad loss Dallas has. The only other 2 losses are at San Francisco and at Philadelphia. Nothing to scoff about in either of those losses. But if they win that game, they're currently sitting in first, and they control their own destiny with the chance to actually win out and get the number 1 seed. Funny enough, Dallas currently sits in first place in the NFC East. However, according to what I read last night, if both teams win out, Philadelphia would win the division. So actually, Dallas is in a really tough spot here, even though they're currently ahead of them, because apparently the 3 tiebreakers, if both teams were to win out, would go down to conference record. And I guess they already calculate out, right? Like if both teams win out, Philadelphia would have the better conference record.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing when they were showing it last night. We're like, why would that be?
Right.
Why would, if they win this, would they only have a 35% chance of winning the division? Obviously, they have the tougher schedule.
Right.
But you'd think, okay, well, maybe both teams go 3-1, whatever. But, yeah, like you said, Philly would hold the tiebreaker.
Right. So, and you look at Philly's schedule, I believe they've got New York twice, the Commanders.
Tommy DeVito and the boys.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. I know they've got they're at Seattle next week. That's the lone game that I think that they could lose. They're at Seattle, then they're home against the Giants, home against the Cardinals, at the Giants. So, pretty much the easiest schedule remaining for any playoff team.
Yeah.
If they can win in Seattle next week, they're probably going to get the division. However, I don't see San Francisco losing again. Looking at their schedule, they win out. San Francisco will get the 1 seed because they have that head-to-head tiebreaker over Philly. But speaking of the Eagles, let's talk a little bit about them. Again, we mentioned it last night. They had no offensive touchdowns, right? Their lone touchdown came on a fumble recovery. Defensive touchdown. It was, I believe, in the 3rd quarter when Dallas had full control of the game, led by 18 before that fumble return for a touchdown. And the last 2 games, 2 total touchdowns for the Eagles offense. We know this defense has struggled. We've mentioned this before, right? Secondary, 28th against the pass. overall in the season.
Yeah.
They've been horrific. Even adding Kevin Byard from Tennessee has not helped. I mean, they've arguably gotten worse. Now they've played a gauntlet of a schedule. They faced, Mahomes and Josh Allen and Dak twice. So I get it. But Philly's been outscored in the 2 games. Everybody talks about Dallas being the team that can't beat good teams. In the 2 games Philly's played, the best 2 teams in the NFC, Dallas and San Francisco, they were outscored 75-32. Does Philly have big concerns here? Because you look at a team, they're 10-3, right? They've beaten the Cowboys. They have some good wins. Should there be concern in Philadelphia here?
I think so. I don't think they have, unless they play the Cowboys at home during the playoffs, which they very well could. They could win a home playoff game against the Cowboys. They certainly won't win on the road against the Cowboys, and I don't think they can beat San Francisco, obviously either place, but it's more than likely going to be in San Francisco. They just, man, I don't know what it is. Offense kind of maybe not quite as good, but, right there-ish, but the defense is just taken such a big step back, and I don't know everybody who they lost, but that secondary is just getting sliced and diced down the field. It is not good. So, and I touched on it last night when we were talking. They really should have lost 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
You could say they could have lost all 4, but I'd say, look, Buffalo or Kansas City, they should have split them, and then, Valdez-Scantling dropping that touchdown cost the Chiefs the game. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. The Bills should have stopped them from kicking a 60-yard field goal in horrible weather. The miscommunication with Josh Allen and Gabe Davis in overtime, which could also ended the game.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different things, but, in reality, they got their ass kicked by the Cowboys and the Niners. Probably should have split the games against – it was a gauntlet 4 games for them. It was very tough. But I just the offense, I feel, could come around and score in the playoffs. They're tough to stop with everything they do, and the way they run the ball and the way they sneak the ball. But I just don't think the defense can win a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, it's a problem, man. Like if you look at last night, the Cowboys offense put up 33, and if we're being honest, they really weren't pushed to do so. Like there was never a point in the game where it's like, oh, if they, we got to really go down and score here. They were up the majority of the game by 2 scores. And so, you could tell very much, we talked about it when we were watching it together. The Cowboys got much more conservative in the second half, and they still put up 33. I really, truly believe if Philadelphia's offense scores last night a couple times, that Dallas could have put up in the 40s, maybe even high 40s. It could have been 2 more touchdowns. But, the Eagles' defense is horrific. Dude, you look at it, they could have lost week 1 to the fucking Patriots. They probably should have. Both times they played the Commanders, they could have lost. One went to overtime. The other one, it took Sam Howell basically collapsing at the end of the game for them to lose, or for them to win. They should have lost the first time they played Dallas. Dallas had a 1st and goal at the 6-yard line with 35 seconds to go. We already talked about they should have lost one to the Bills or the Chiefs. It's funny. This team very easily is a couple plays away, and this is not an exaggeration. They're a couple plays away from having 5 or 6 losses.
Oh yeah. Well, they won so many close games. They're almost kind of, and people don't put them in the same category as the Vikings, but they won so many close games. They're like the Vikings last year, where they were 8-0 in 1-score games or something like that.
Exactly.
And then they get the doors blown off them by the Cowboys and the 49ers. So I think Philly fans are panicking at least a little bit. I think probably before the stretch, you think they got a really good chance of winning the Super Bowl. Them or the Niners probably. And now after the stretch, you realize, okay, we're not as our defense isn't going to hold up like we need it to potentially win a Super Bowl. So
everybody just thinks I'm a hater. I get labeled as a hater.
Well, listen, you are and listen, I don't like him near as much as your dad. Black Tom Brady. You're a Black Tom Brady hater. That's for sure. You definitely are, because your dad likes him, and I agree with you that he's kind of a one-read guy. He plays behind an awesome offensive line, and he's throwing to a Heisman Trophy winner and a top 5 receiver in football, and a pretty decent tight end. He's got a lot of weapons. He an embarrassment of riches, if you will, and like you said, probably the best offensive line in football. So
I think the best offensive line in the last 5 to 10
years.
years.
That's what I mean. You can make an argument that maybe someone,
add in the fucking tush push And
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, you should never get fucking stopped. They 2 offensive touchdowns the last 2 games is fucking embarrassing. There's one problem with the offense, and his name is Jalen Hurts. And I call him one read Jalen because it's one read and fucking run. And if he was smart and knew anything better, he wouldn't even do one read. He just fucking snapped the ball and run because it's the only goddamn thing he can do. He can't do anything well. He can run. He's a good athlete. He's a below average quarterback. That's the fucking truth. We've seen it the last 2 weeks. He's struggled against good teams, and we're going to see him continue to struggle. And all this bullshit about how good he played in the Super Bowl, bullshit. 3 tush pushes on the to
You're
score
lucky your
touchdowns.
dad's not in
3
there.
tush pushes.
He'd be going after you.
And he's not the black Tom Brady. He's one read Jalen. That's who he is. You put any other quarterback behind that Eagles offensive line with A.J. Brown, with Davante Smith, with Dallas Goedert, you name it, you get a pretty good offensive coordinator. You have last year you had one of the best defenses in football, and they still couldn't win a fucking Super Bowl, and they're not going to win one this year. And I'm fucking tired of the Eagles.
They're not going to win one this year, that's for sure.
I was so happy last night that they shit on all over themselves.
They got smoked.
Jalen threw up on his shirt multiple times in that game.